Let's get started. Hey everybody, so like I said, welcome to this webinar. I had been taking questions from the past couple of weeks from a couple of different outlets, and I got a lot of good things that people are interested in. But if you have something you'd like to ask me, just add it to the chat and I will be sure to address it at the end. I know it's a beautiful Friday afternoon over here, so we're gonna try and wrap this up in 30, 35 minutes. We'll see how much content we get. All right, let me pull up my questions here. All right, so number one, I got a couple of questions from people who said they were totally new to Google Analytics and they wanted some help with it. So the first question we're going to look at is someone wrote in and said, I'm new to this. I need help knowing what I should keep a record of from Google Analytics. So this is not the answer that this person wants to hear. I'm very sorry, but one of my pet peeves that I've definitely seen when I was working in-house, I forgot to give you my little spiel here, but in case you don't already know me, my name is Emily Patterson and I run bMeasure. It's a digital agency that's very much focused on helping nonprofits and government measure their marketing and web campaigns and then use that data to get insights into what's working with their web content, their digital marketing, can be a grant that has a large digital component. I work on all sorts of different projects. So one of the things that I have to say, one of my pet peeves, before I went out on my own, I worked in-house for a long time, and I saw a lot of nonprofits do this, that they would have this sort of master spreadsheet, and every month they would go through and they'd pull a bunch of stats from their web analytics. So they might pull page views for that month and unique visitors and maybe how many people played a video or signed up for email, and they would put it in this giant spreadsheet that maybe lived in Google Drive with the marketing department. And honestly, I think that this is a total waste of time and is something that people should not be doing, because I think you end up with this big giant record of stuff, but it's you're not really doing anything with it. It's just like a data entry task. Google Analytics saves the data in there, so if there's no need just to record it for the sake of recording. You can go back at any time and look up March 2019 versus March 2018 to see how you're doing year over year. You don't need to take the data out of there and put it into a spreadsheet. And I totally understand if you need to be reporting your metrics out to your executive director or your head of marketing or whatever you have in your organization. And I think to do this, I recommend using Google Data Studio. Is a nice way to build dashboards. I use this a lot for clients. And those automatically update. So you're, again, save this kind of annoying task of actually going in and pulling data out of Google Analytics and putting it into a Word doc or something. That frees you up to do other things like analyze the data that you've gotten. All right, let's see. I had another person who said, that they were new to Google Analytics. Oh, here we go. Our web designer just sent me the login info for our Google Analytics. This is my first experience with GA. Where should I start? Any favorite newbie tips or favorite reports? Okay, I think this is a great question, and this is one where I'm going to show you my screen so we can kind of walk through what's possible. Okay. All right. So I'm using my website here as the guinea pig. Like I said, I send NDAs with most of my clients, so I don't want to show you their data. But so here's my my Google Analytics account for my my own business. I don't get a ton of traffic. And just a super quick overview of what I think is most useful as far as reporting. What is not useful, I find, is this real-time reports. Honestly, the only thing I ever do with this is use it for testing. I do think it's a great way Oh, good. I have one person on the site. This is me. Okay. I do think it's a great way if you're setting up some new tracking and you want to see how it performs. A lot of times I will go to that site and I will, complete the form or play the video or, navigate the page. And I can see myself in real time doing those actions. And it will let me know that everything is tracking correctly and the way I want it to. That's honestly the only time I ever use that. Under audience, so a lot of the stuff that says beta, I don't use. Google loves to experiment with new things, and a lot of times I can be a little bit slow to adopt any new changes because I'm really wedded kind of to some of the stuff that I have found most useful over the years. I do like this demographic reporting. This is something you have to turn on, but I think it's really cool. Especially when, actually I'll show you in a second after this, you can see not just the age and gender of your users, but also the age and gender of people who are doing specific actions on your site. This is, of course, more useful if you have, let's go back a ways, a larger data set here. So demographics is cool. I really like this technology report and mobile report. This is very helpful, I think, if you are in the middle of a website redesign and you need to get information about what sorts of devices, what sorts of browsers your users are using. That way, that you should be, designing with, those in mind. Like, of course, you want a website that works great for absolutely everybody. But if most of your users are on iPhones and they're using Safari, maybe you're going to set that as the primary browser and make sure the experience is best in there. And of course, sometimes some organizations are still pretty slow to have mobile responsive sites. And this is a great place to go to make your case that you really need to invest in this. You can see what percentage of your users are on mobile, and you can pull information about whether they're spending more or less time, most likely, so it always is, on your site compared to other users. So I think those in here are very good. As a marketing person, I do a lot of marketing. That's what's under the acquisition section. So I think in here, all of these reports are very helpful. If you have a Google AdWords grant, looking in the Google Ads is very helpful. It'll give you more data about when people come to your site, what are they doing, rather than just from the Google Ads side. Also highly recommend you link your Google Analytics up with Search Console so that you can see in here, what search queries people are using to get to your site. I don't get too much search traffic, so this doesn't really look like very much. That's all very helpful. And then under behavior, this is where you're going to find your page, your content reports. So you can see very easily what's your top pages. A report I really like in here is landing pages. So you can see where people are entering your site. And for a lot of people, it is not your homepage. I think a lot of organizations operate under the assumption that everybody is coming in through our homepage, and that's going to be our front door to our website. We need to put everything there and make sure that it's totally perfect and has all of our offerings on it. However, my site, I think, is typical for of a lot of places where people are coming to the homepage. It is a major way, but they're also going to a lot of these other content pages, specifically the webinars. I think that's very cool. And then also this conversion section is very important. I feel like a bit of a broken record here, but I highly, highly recommend setting up goals for your site. That's really how you're going to get value out of Google Analytics. So identifying what are 3 main things, I always say, that you want users to do when they come to your site. The most basic ones would be subscribe to your email, make a donation, sign up for some sort of other thing that you're offering. So it might be a webinar like this, might be downloading research, it might be participating in some sort of political action. all of those things are very typical examples. You'd want to set them up and identify them as conversions, and then that's what goes into this goals section. But honestly, I don't want to spend the whole webinar on this. I wanted to show you my favorite thing from Google Analytics. This is what I really think is also very helpful, is this advanced segment feature. So if you click on this, I think a lot of people see this and it never registers as something that they can even use. But if you click on this, then you can go in here and filter your traffic. So this is how you would look at people who, you look at different segments of users. So for example, one thing you could do is let's look at search traffic. I have a lot of things I've built in here for clients, so just ignore those. Let's look at search traffic versus email traffic versus referral traffic. So those are 3 different ways that people reach my website. These, you can really do this with anything. You can look at how about mobile traffic versus desktop traffic, or traffic from Europe versus the United States, or people who have visited 3 times in the past month versus people who have visited once in the past month. You can get really creative here, and I use this feature a lot. But this is where you would you can really kind of drill in. You can go to any other report and drill into, how are these different segments of users different from each other. So I just mentioned before that I don't have a lot of data here, but let's expand this a little bit more. See if that helps. So let's see, we're looking here at gender, male versus female, and you can see, whether search traffic, email traffic, or referral traffic are some more likely to be men versus women. I recommend taking a look at these percentages versus the overall numbers, because certain segments will be larger than others, so that allows you to kind of compare them more on an even playing field. So pretty much, with all segments, more of my users are women. Not surprising, that's who works for nonprofits. But you can see here that actually, search traffic skews a little bit more male. So here, looking at this over time and looking at this with like a larger segment of data, and different factors that come up as you kind of have these discussions with your colleagues, that's how you can get insights into, okay, we want to target these sorts of people, or we have identified that this section of the site, this is where people are having problems, this is where they're leaving or they're not completing something. I find this very useful to be able to get at those sorts of insights. That's really what you'd want to be doing with your analytics, rather than kind of creating these spreadsheets, big spreadsheets, and just reporting out things at the end of the month. All right, let's see, anybody have any questions? If not, I will go on to the next question that I got from my pre-questionnaire here. All right, so let's see. Okay, I got another question from somebody who says that they frequently design social media ads. What do you think makes people more likely to click? So this is a little bit different, of course, than one of the other things that I do besides analytics is I do help people analyze their digital advertising and set those up as tests so that they can get feedback to improve their fundraising ads or improve their email acquisition ads, that sort of thing. And so I'm not a designer, but I have done a good bit of A/B testing for clients about what works there. And so I want to preface this by saying I think that this is something that can be very different for everybody's audiences. So I do recommend testing this, and it doesn't have to be In a perfect world, we could do really clear A/B test where you're perfectly splitting the lists and you're controlling the variables, so that you're just testing one thing at a time and everything is totally random. However, in the real world where we're running a fundraising campaign and we only have a month, and we just, we want to test, but we also want to actually raise money. That, it's okay to kind of incorporate testing in here, but maybe it's not the super best practice. Maybe you try something out for a shorter period than you would, and you just run with the winner. Or maybe you turn on Facebook the, automatically optimize the winner feature, which isn't really a, great way, isn't a perfect way to A/B test, but I think it's a way that you can get feedback on your ads, but also, still be running the most compelling campaign. So I do recommend testing this, and I do find with clients sometimes things totally surprise me that I didn't anticipate. So, but in general, what I tell people, that was the point here, is that especially in Facebook and Instagram, what you're really going for is something that's going to make people stop scrolling and pay attention to your ad. People are very desensitized to ads online. So if something is using especially like stock footage and looks very bland and ad-ish, then people will kind of just go right past it. So I would say don't use stock photos, or at least go for higher quality stock photos. I do love Unsplash that don't necessarily look like stock photos. I think it's really great to have photos of people who are actually being helped by your organization, and kind of ones that look a little bit maybe less polished and a little bit more candid. I find that those do well because they look like things that people's friends and family may have taken. So I would say kind of candid, non-stock photos. I find that photos of one or two people rather than a group do perform better. I think people are kind of more struck when it's a simpler image. When there's a lot of stuff going on, it doesn't grab our attention as well. So if it's just one or two faces that are very striking and engaging, I think those make for great ads. And of course, keeping your copy very short is also important. You don't want it to be a whole paragraph because people don't read. You just want something that grabs their attention. And I also would go with something that's not too clever. I know, I love a good pun, but I find that puns don't work very well in advertising, social media advertising copy, because people, they just want to be told very straightforwardly what this is about. And one more tip is that I do find people are very skeptical of advertising. I think a lot of people have had bad experiences with ads online or heard stories. So I do like to stress, what people, make sure that it's clear what people are going to get if they click on the ad, and then, stress what this organization is. It's a nonprofit. We do XYZ. We're raising funds for XYZ, to just make it very clear what you're going to be clicking on and what you're going to be getting and what this organization is. So we're very upfront with that. So this would be my tips. All right. Okay. Another question here. My nonprofit is getting ready to redesign our website in 6 months. What are some things we should be doing now? This is an awesome question. I'm really glad that you are thinking ahead. I do think this is a 6 months period, or maybe even up to about 3 months before your redesign. I think is a great time to think about about how you can collect data to inform your new design for your site, both your new design and how you focus your budget for it. I think a lot of times website redesigns are not entirely new designs. You might be able to refresh the look of a few things and then maybe fix a few back-end problems. So this will help you figure out, what are some major issues that need to be addressed, and what are some places where we should focus our energies on giving a new look. So let's see. I would first, I would say, 2 things that you need to do here in advance is, think about your goals for the site, not just necessarily your goals for the redesign, but what are you trying to accomplish with your website? So is it a way for you to just simply showcase your organization, get more publicity for your organization? Is it just kind of a placeholder where people can come check you out because maybe you do a lot of your activity on the ground? Or is this really a platform where you are like, you have a lot of content, like maybe a lot of educational content, or you have a digital, some sort of application that you want people to sign up for? Can be a whole like a course or a special tool. Can be a whole bunch of different things. So you want to think about, make it very clear and make sure you're on the same page as the rest of your team. Why do we have this website? And then once you determine that, turn that into numbers. If the reason, turn that into numbers so that when you finish your redesign, you can compare, okay, did this redesign help us better meet our goals X, Y, and Z? So for example, if your website is simply a way of, telling people what your organization does, your metric for measuring that might simply be visits to your website. The more visits, the more people learn about your organization. So that increases that success. Another thing is that you might have an educational site and you're very focused on, you want people to read or engage with a lot of educational content. It could be actually education, or you could be informing people, consumers, about, conservation issues or consumer issues. One of my big clients is the Better Business Bureau, and they have a lot of content on there about consumer issues. So in that case, maybe you're interested in just visits to those articles, or you're interested in completed reads of those articles. So in that case, your benchmark might be, okay, before the redesign, we had 100,000 reads of those in a month. After the redesign, we have 120. So you can benchmark and say that the redesign helped improve the flow of the website, the user experience of the website, so that we were better or, not as good at accomplishing those goals. So I like to think about things, using this framework, like what's our goal here, and then how can we represent that as a number? Another question I didn't get specifically for this, but I see a lot out there, is just what are you measuring? I think you don't want to approach it from that metrics first. You want to think about your goal and then turn that into a metric. So I think back to the actual question here about the website redesign, I think it's important to, decide on those goals and then turn them into metrics, and then make sure you have that data all set up before your website redesign. So, if you weren't tracking views of your, conservation tips articles, you really need to make sure that, that the analytics code is on those pages. More often, views of pages is always pretty easy. More often I run into, oh, well, we really want to, get enrollment in this program, but we weren't tracking this process. You want to make sure that anything that's super important to your site and to your business all that tracking is set up in advance. That way you can have that benchmark, and you can also use that data to identify, like, okay, this isn't really working as well as we thought it was, or we hoped it was. This might be a great place to get some more consumer feedback, or to work on the design as part of this redesign process. So, but overall, recap my rambling here is that I do think 6 months, maybe even down to 3 months, is a good amount of time frame to start prepping for your redesign. And really think about what are your couple of things, like what does this website do for your organization? How do we measure that? And do we have that data right now, or are we going to have to implement something on the site? All right. Cool. All right. And yeah, if you have any questions that you want to build on, just feel free to put them in the chat, and I will get to them. If not, I will just keep going down my list here. When it comes to presenting data and charts, what do you recommend? Okay, yeah, this is another thing. It's not exactly analytics related, but I'm happy, Google Analytics related, but I'm happy to address it. So one of the things that I like to do with charts is to make sure that they are pretty much super stripped down. I know that Excel and PowerPoint, they put in a lot of extra, like they put the grid lines in the back, and they label all the axes, and they put lots of stuff on the chart. And I think that this is a bit distracting. I like the idea of keeping my chart super minimalist to make sure that when you're looking at it, it's very easy to tell what is the point of this chart. So sometimes if there's something I want to call out, I will make that line or that bar a different color. I also like to do, I've heard it called the McKinsey style PowerPoints, where you put the kind of the main takeaway in the headline. So you get the main takeaway, and then you get the chart. So it's very clear what this is. I think you don't want to be, sometimes I say, like, it's not math class, like you don't really want to show all your work. You just want to showcase the finished product by making this as simple and focused on the insight as possible. Cool. All right, let's do another demo. Cool. So let's see. Please demo. Another question here is, please demo one or two of your favorite things that Google Tag Manager allows website owners to do. I understand the concept thanks to your past webinar, but I haven't fully grasped the benefits yet. Okay. All right. Demo time. All right. So let's go back to Google Analytics here. So this time we're going to go over to Google Tag Manager. Right, so one of my, I was going to give this some thought before this webinar, and I would say two of the big things that I typically use Google Tag Manager for is either to track actions on the page. So if you've seen one of these webinars before, I say that Google Analytics does a great job of tracking page views out of the box. Like, that's pretty much the only thing it does. So if you want to track other things, and I have a lot of examples here on my website, you're going to have to pretty much use Google Tag Manager to set that up. That's really the direction that Google is going. So for example, for the ask a question and get advice form here, if I wanted to track, say, somebody submitting this form, this is how I could use Google Tag Manager. I do have a thank you page set up here, so I also can track visits to the thank you page as a proxy. But if you all are probably very familiar with websites, and you don't always get that thank you page, or maybe you don't want to track the thank you page because the thank you page is also the thank you page for 5 other forms. They all redirect there. So with Google Tag Manager, you can track this, clicks on this send button. You can also track form submits too. It's pretty, there's a variety of different ways you can get at things. If this is kind of a form that refreshes and has a thank you message right on this page, you can even track the refresh and the new question appearing here. The other thing I like to use Google Tag Manager for is what they call the data layer. So it's basically it's sending information about your site to this layer of JavaScript that you can then pull these elements from and send to Google Analytics. And this has been is a great way to capture more information about what's happening on your website or what's happening with your users. So I changed this form since I sent it out, just so you can kind of get an example here. So this would be something that you could capture in the data layer. I previously had this as a question where you can write in your organization name, but if you have a form on your site where someone can, say, identify which type of user they are, they're a nonprofit person or a government person or an agency person, you could send this information to the data layer when someone hits send, and then use Google Tag Manager to pull that out and send it to Google Analytics, and you'd put it in most likely what in the custom dimension is what the feature is called, so that you can pretty much use that feature that I showed you before to look at, okay, here's what nonprofit people do on the site, here's what government people do on the site. This is especially useful if you have a site where people need to log in. You know, a lot of times, you know, lots of people come to my site and never fill out this form. But if you have a site where, you know, say it's an intranet, that's one project I set this up for. You know, people might need to identify themselves, like, you know, I'm with the accounting department, I'm with the marketing department, I'm with the programming department. Then you can see, you know, this is how much, this is, you filter your Google Analytics data to look at, this is the content that the accounting department looks at. This is the sort of, these are the videos that they watch. These are the articles that they read. You know, so it really depends on how your site's set up and how, what sort of information you need to be collecting in order to make improvements. This isn't necessarily something you want to do just because you can. So I have, this is in, hold on, I have a, okay. I heard a question here, but it's a long one. Okay. So let me just show you real quick here. I have the preview pane from Google Tag Manager set up. So, you know, if I wanted to capture clicks on this button, so I could either use, you know, how you set, actually we're kind of running out of time here. How you set this up is you can look, you can set up triggers in Tag Manager so that every time somebody clicks, it shows up here in this bar. And then you can go in and look at, you know, these variables. This is the section, see what you can capture. I typically look for this click ID, and you can set up a rule in Tag Manager to say every time there's a click with this click ID, you know, fire this event to Google Analytics. I also like to, another way to do this is to use the inspect console over here. So the thing you're really looking for here is the element ID, which is this right here, G-form submit button 18. And then in Tag Manager, what you would do is, I have one set up here already that I'll just show you, is that you could set up your event so that you can send whatever variables you want to Google Analytics. And you set up a rule here that, this is the easiest way to do it, honestly, is that you want to, every time, this reads like every time someone clicks on, says all elements, but you can also do links on this specific element. So in that case, it's, you know, G form submit button 3. The one we were looking at was form 18. So if I wanted to, I could, you know, add that here or change it if I wanted to look at that form. And this shows that every time somebody clicks on that, this will send that data to Google Analytics. I think we don't have time to create a new one, but hopefully that gives you a kind of a good idea of how that works. All right, and wait, I had a chat and now I lost my chat. All right, so if anybody, we have, you know, only 4 minutes left, so if you have any questions, please type them in here. If you don't, I'm always available afterwards, because we might not have a chance to get to them. Let's see, we had somebody says, we email from our CRM, Blackbaud, and the links are personalized for each recipient in GA. These page views appear as a bunch of individual page views separate from the actual pages page views. Okay, I know exactly what you mean. Cool, this is great. All right, so there is actually a very easy way to filter that out. It is over here in this admin section. And hold on. It is, so sometimes, depending on how complicated it is, you might want to create a filter. And I can certainly send around the link for that afterwards, the instructions. But shoot, I haven't done this in a little while. There is a field in here where you can enter in specifically, you want to look for, so there will be maybe a question mark and then a parameter equals blah, 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 blah. You want to capture that parameter so that like, might say like, CID or S equals or Q equals. You want to capture that parameter, and there's a field in here where you can input that, and it will strip all of that off the URLs. I don't want to spend I haven't done this in a couple weeks, and I forget always exactly where it is in the interface, but can send that around when I send out the recording for this video, so you'll have it. Thanks, Chris. And super fast, last question here is, so if you're starting from scratch on Google Analytics, where would you go other than to the source themselves? Is there a Google Online School? Yes, Google has the Google Analytics Academy, I believe it's called. So it has a whole bunch of videos, and actually a good way to get to them is here in your Google Analytics platform. So if you click on this Discover button here, here is all the Analytics Academy videos. So they have a lot of great things. I think these are good. I also recommend, the company was previously called Lunametrics. Now it's like Bounteous. They have, once you learn the basics, they have a lot of information about, a great blog about the next level stuff. So I recommend checking out those two things. All right, well, I think that's everything for today. If you have anything else, feel free to email me. I have my email address is emily@bmeasure.com, and you should have it if you signed up for this. So have a great weekend, and thank you so much for attending and all of the excellent questions. Hope to do this again maybe in the fall. So if you have anything you'd like to see next time, feel free to send it my way. Great. Thank you. And I will send out those links that I promised to.